Hello, everybody. Welcome to World Edition. Um, we're going to be, we just get started. On World Edition, we have a special. We're going to be discussing the Ahmaud Arbery case. And the verdict is already in. And with us, we do have a person who is a professor at Georgia College. He's also an attorney, a graduate of the University of Southern California, received his BA, his law degree at the Ohio State University, and his master's in law from New York University. Let's bring in Adam Lampero. Adam, welcome to World Edition. And our special edition, we're going to be discussing the Ahmaud Arbery case. Now,
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here.
yes, since we beam across the world, as a matter of fact, Roberto Sperano says he's going to be here from Italy. Okay, but I don't know if he checked the time on this, but when he saw the time, we're looking at 2 o'clock in the morning for him to beam in from Italy, because I did a lot of appointments when I was over there. So we'll see if he shows up. But if you could brief us a little bit for the people around the world. By the way, he barely knew about this case. So if you can tell the world a little bit about the Ahmaud Arbery case and what happened here in the United States.
Sure. This is a case that's really captured the country's attention. It involves a killing that occurred in Brunswick, Georgia. And the facts are essentially this. In Brunswick, Georgia, there were a series of burglaries that people were concerned about and were looking for the suspect of these burglaries. And one afternoon, 3 gentlemen saw an African-American man jogging in the area where these burglaries had allegedly occurred. What they proceeded to do was to chase him in their trucks with shotguns and ultimately to track him down. And when they did, they raised their shotguns and they confronted him. And in response to that, Ahmaud Arbery attempted to run away and then ultimately to defend himself because he was obviously in fear for his life. And that led to a struggle with one of the gentlemen, which led to Arbery being shot 3 times, twice in the chest, and dying. Subsequently, the 3 gentlemen were charged with, among other things, felony murder and malice murder. And they were recently found guilty by a jury, all 3 of them, on most of the charges. And I think the verdict was correct. They tried to claim that they were acting in self-defense, but because they really initiated and provoked the encounter, that claim was really meritless. And I think that this raises an important issue. If we look to the last 3 high-profile cases, Derek Chauvin was convicted for the murder of George Floyd. Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted in connection with his conduct in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And these 3 gentlemen were convicted for the murder of Arbery in Georgia. I think the jury got it right all 3 times. It restores my faith in the criminal justice system, and it suggests that the criminal justice system isn't systemically racist.
Right. Okay, Dan Worthington has joined us. He was the former Associate Dean of the University of South Dakota School of Law. Have you been following the Ahmaud Arbery case and the verdict, which is in? Dan.
Yeah, I've been following it. I've been, like everyone else probably in the country, along with the Rittenhouse case. I agree with Adam. I think that all 3 cases were decided properly based on the elements that the jury would have had to decide based on the evidence. I think that the 3 defendants in the Arbery case can't really use, like Adam said, the self-defense defense because they were the aggressors. Now, I mean, one of the things that I think they did claim is that they were trying to make a citizen's arrest and just detain him, and that he became the aggressor, and they used self-defense. But as Adam said, he tried to flee again and again, and only turned to trying to take the gun away when it became clear he couldn't avoid them anymore. So he was the one who was trying to act in self-defense, I believe. I think it was a retching thing for the jury to decide, particularly in this environment, the social environment, difficult social environment. I don't know if they had racist intent. Who knows? I mean, it goes to the issues of mens rea and the guilty mind and what they had in their minds when all this was going on, or they were just victims of their own stupid decisions, which is probably the case. I mean, if they've had burglaries in the area, then obviously they have some fear that someone's. I don't know. I don't know if he is acting suspicious or he's just jogging. I mean, there's a difference, right?
Mhm. Well, from what I understand, the facts of the case was that because I've done this myself, there was a home under construction. He went in to look at the construction side. I've done that to see, where they're at in building and when they're going to complete the house. And he came by there 5 times. And so the thing is, that was the issue. But Tremonti has just joined us. But now I'm going to throw the panel a curveball, because the thing is, there's no easy answers on the World Edition Special Edition with Ahmaud Arbery. Okay, so the thing is, the jury found him guilty, and it looked like they were trying to institute a citizen's arrest, which apparently they had a law in the books at that time allowing citizen arrest in the great state of Georgia, and they found him guilty. So here's the problem that I have, and I'll direct Adam to you because you're a professor at Georgia College and you teach this stuff. How do you reconcile this case, counselor, with Trayvon Martin? In other words, the George Zimmerman Trayvon Martin case, where it seems same facts, same circumstances, but Trayvon Martin walks, and these people are going to possibly spend the rest of their life in jail. So there's your curveball, Adam. You're up.
For a few reasons. First, the stand your ground law in Florida is different than in Georgia. Number two, the facts of the Trayvon Martin case were different than the facts here. I'm not saying that justified a not guilty verdict, but they were different. They were not the same. And number three, it's the criminal justice system. You have a different jury, and I trust that jury looked at the facts and rendered the verdict that they believed was the most just. What I think is more important here, though, is that we live in a climate here where people are claiming that the criminal justice system and this country is systemically racist. That's false. The verdict in the Chauvin case was correct. The verdict in the Rittenhouse case was correct. And the verdict here was correct because it was based on the facts and the law. And the rule of law won the day. And we should be proud of that. And we should reject these divisive arguments that were systemically racist, that it's black versus white, privileged versus unprivileged, and oppressed versus unoppressed. We need to have faith in our justice system, faith in the facts, faith in the rule of law. And that's why I believe the jury got it right in all 3 cases. It's a vindication for our country, our justice system, and it's a rejection of the systemic racism argument that's dividing us currently.
Okay, Tremonti O'Leary has joined us. He's been on our shows before. He also has a legal background. So since you've been to law school, you know all this stuff, right? Tell me, how do you reconcile this if you're a person in the public? Trayvon Martin, which is in your state in Florida, he walks. George Zimmerman walks. The guy was purportedly trying to do citizen's arrest. These 3 people end up life in prison. Tremonti, like I said, it's not an easy question. So what's your thoughts on that?
I pretty much agree with everything Adam said. It's a different jurisdiction. Obviously, it's Florida, and the stand your ground laws is very controversial versus Georgia. So, as Adam said, you have, different case, different facts, different jury. I will say, just in general, like I said, the stand your ground law is a very controversial law here in Florida. And so, even aside from this case, there have been other cases that have been very controversial because the argument is it basically allows you to kill someone and get away with it, especially when it comes to like rival gang members and enemies and such. It's kind of like a loophole where they can get away with essentially murder. Mm-hmm. So it's that's really the best way that I can answer it. Every case is different, and so every set of facts are unique. But I am glad that the jury got it got it right, in my opinion. In this case, I do feel that Trayvon Martin's case, I feel like that was a miscarriage of justice. Um, I'm actually here in South Florida, where Trayvon's from, but you know, I was very worried. This, I will say, I was very worried. I didn't know if we were gonna have a repeat uh, miscarriage of justice like was done in the Trayvon Martin case, or but glad they got it right this time.
Dan Worthington, since you were the former dean of the associate dean of the University of South Dakota Law School, and you have to reconcile these cases. How do you reconcile Trayvon Martin, where the person's, it's George Zimmerman instituting a quote citizen's arrest, which by the way I have an issue with that myself, and then these three people in New Brunswick who are doing the same thing, issuing a citizen's arrest. Both times guns went off, both times people were killed. One walks and one stays. Well, what are your thoughts on that, Professor Worthington?
Well, again, the facts are different, and the law is different. Exactly what's been said before, and what may have also impacted it is, if I remember right, and I don't remember clearly, but wasn't George Zimmerman some sort of part-time security for the complex or wherever where the gentleman was entering? So, although he wasn't acting in a law enforcement capacity, he was acting under the color of his employment in defending that space. Now, I don't necessarily agree that he should have killed the kid. It's not right. But I can see why the facts are clearly different here. I mean, if this had been three deputies who were trying to apprehend this young man in Georgia, it may have been a different situation. I don't know. Depends. If obviously these were citizens, and again, it goes to their intent, and the jury decided that they were hunting him down, and it is what it is. I think it's really a different situation. So I think that the jury's got it right in all three cases, although I don't like the stand your ground in Florida and as a general rule, because it does provide an excuse for bad guys to kill each other. But there's also felony murder laws that if someone's in the process of committing a crime and they kill somebody else, it's felony murder. So, I mean, there are other ways to go at finding defendants guilty with different fact patterns.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mark Lee has just joined us. Mark, we're discussing the Ahmaud Arbery case, and we're trying to reconcile it. Now, everybody on the panel except for you has a legal background. So, exactly. But the thing is, you have a background in journalism, so you follow this stuff. How do you reconcile, Mark, the Trayvon Martin case with this Ahmaud Arbery? And Trayvon Martin, the guy was instituting a civil arrest, and he shot somebody. He walks. The other person, three people doing the same thing, and they spend life in prison. How do you reconcile that, Mark?
Well, I was watching a little bit of the trial this past weekend, and when I was seeing what was going on, and I was actually watching the testimony of two of the individuals, it didn't seem like they had much just cause, in my opinion, because even some of their testimony gave the impression that they were trying to do kind of a citizen's action or a citizen's arrest or citizen's things without having any kind of true probable cause, from what I heard, and things along those lines. So you need, even if you're going to make a citizen's arrest, I think that you need a probable cause. And as I stated before on this show, and actually even came up on our Thanksgiving dinner table talk and everything, definitely there is some things that are going around. Adam may disagree with me about the judicial system and whether it is fair or not and all of that. But definitely that was even some of the conversation that we were having. And, we just had a major incident here in Durham. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in that regard that just happened earlier today. So there was a major shooting here at one of our local malls. And of course, so some people are saying that this is just another example of guns and the gun laws and people having too much access to guns, because that just happened less than several hours ago.
Mhm.
and it
Yeah.
made the CNN news.
Right. Okay. And so the thing is, it sounds to me that different states have different laws. Just like in some states, you can gamble, like
Yep.
in Nevada. Some states, like North Carolina, you can't gamble. You end up going to jail if you gamble because our HOA was trying to do a poker game, and I tried to explain to them and said, "Look, you can't do poker here. This is North Carolina. You got to go to Nevada."
Actually, you can gamble in North Carolina
Oh,
legally. You
oh,
can
you can. How do you gamble legally in North Carolina?
lottery.
Oh,
Yeah.
the
No,
lottery. Yeah, right.
well,
You're
not
right.
just a lot,
Right.
not just the
Okay.
lottery,
There's
but also
lottery, and I think there's sports betting too.
lottery, sports
But
betting, and also certain parts of North Carolina.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
I mean, that was also one of our conversations. Because
right.
Mom was actually going up to Cherokee, so it was actually you can legally gamble if you go up to Cherokee because that is
Right.
on sovereign Native American land. And
Well,
they
I mean,
gamble.
statewide, you can play the lottery. You don't have to go anywhere.
Right.
You can
Right.
legally gamble now.
But Tremonte, here's my question. With such a complex legal system that we have, and your rights can vary from state to state, when do you get the education about this? In other words, is law being taught in elementary school, middle schools, and high schools so people know that, hey, you cross the border, your legal rights can completely change? Dan,
That's a good. So
I know it's a good question.
That's a
Right.
great question. So
Yeah.
the answer is kind of, but basically no. And I mean, if you're talking about like comparative law, like state to state, no, that's not being taught. What is maybe being taught are the fundamentals of state constitutional law and federal law. Not to get too deep here, but you're always going to have those two levels. You're always going to have the state level and the federal level. So me as a professor, I'm also a professor. I'm an adjunct. It's not being taught in any general curriculum. It's I have seen now since I've been out of school, it was not being taught. The most you got was like U.S. history, but that wasn't world history and such. But that wasn't really law based. I have seen since I've been out of school, I've heard of, I should say, certain schools have legal classes, business law classes. Certain classes are offered now, probably as electives. But as far as like in the general curriculum, that's not happening. It's too specialized, just like any other area. That you would have to get a doctorate for, because you do need a doctor. So it's very specialized. And then, of course, it's not really taught until you get more into advanced terminal degrees. That's when you really, get into it. Now, I should say, if you're in, I do teach associates, bachelor's degree students, master's degree students, and those who are on the path to become lawyers who do take criminal justice courses, paralegal courses, law courses, they are learning this stuff. But
Right.
again, that's because that's their intended path. I agree that this is stuff that a lot of just everyone should know, right?
Right.
Some stuff is just stuff everyone should know, but there's also just a level of accountability. Like, who has ever even read their state's constitution, right? Like, you know what I mean? There's
Good point. Right.
your state's constitution.
Yeah.
Who-
Well, that's the reason I think it should be
read
taught
the
in
federal
school,
Constitution?
because if you have to learn it in school, it's because you have to learn it. No one's going to
Right,
volunteer and spend their free time learning the state constitutional law.
Right.
Adam, you're a professor at Georgia College. What are your thoughts about teaching law to middle school, elementary, and high school students?
I think it's important to do that. I think it's important to make our students as informed and educated as possible. And on that note, in educating our students, there's a few things that our students should know. Our country is not systemically racist. The verdict in the Chauvin case, the verdict in the Rittenhouse case, and the verdict in the Arbery case is just an example of that fact. They should also know that when police fatally shoot suspects, whether they're white or black, 90 to 95% of the times, those suspects are armed and they are resisting arrest. And the third thing people need to know here is that one of the defects in our criminal law is the felony murder doctrine. It has been used to put both African Americans and white people in prison for life in a most unjustifiable manner. Because what it essentially says is, if you're part of a group of people that is committing a felony and someone dies in the course of that conduct, everybody is held responsible for the murder. That's fundamentally unjust. And it's unjust in the Arbery case because Travis McDonald was the shooter. The other two individuals, yes, they may be racists. Yes, they're despicable. Yes, they should go to prison. They're facing life in prison simply because one of them was driving the truck that McDonald was in, and the other one was following behind them. But they didn't know that Travis was going to shoot someone, yet they're on the hook for murder under the felony murder doctrine. If you want to look at something in the criminal justice system that's unjust and that African-American scholars and white scholars have rallied against for years, it's the felony murder doctrine. I'd like to see Mark Lee come out against the felony murder doctrine tonight.
I would like to see him come against it too. What are your thoughts about that? The felony, I remember studying it years ago.
It's absurd. It holds
and I thought it was kind of stupid because if I'm following somebody and they shoot them, they're the ones that are doing the gun. I'm guilty of murder, and that's because I'm hanging out with them. What are your thoughts about that, Mark? Felony murder? Do I get convicted too?
Well, first off, there was a famous case. First off, there was a famous case here in Durham that, if I remember correctly, involved that. And yes, you are right. Those people did have just reason for that to be part of the issue of that conviction, because it was actually an elderly white lady who I believe was being burglarized and did manage to defend herself and all of that. And I want to say that was maybe 10 or 15 years ago. And I want to say that she actually got off on that because, like I said, that they were invading her house and actually knew some of the people involved in that particular case. So I can see where you're coming from on that, Adam, and I can definitely understand and agree with that and everything. Now, as far as it being systematically racist or not, that I may disagree with you.
Wait, hold on, Mark. I got a question though. Before you, let's give a different set of facts for felony murder. Okay, let's say, because every case is different.
Right.
Let's say someone goes into a convenience store that has a little crowd of people, and they go in with their gun. They don't intend to shoot anyone. They only intend to take their weapon out to scare someone, but their weapon accidentally goes off, ricochets off something in the store and strikes someone and kills them during the commission of that robbery. So now someone's dead.
And this was an accidental shooting, because, by the way, he
didn't mean to shoot the gun. The gun he actually shot it in the air. Actually, let's say he shot it in the air to scare.
Right. It ricochets and hits someone.
Didn't point it to anyone, but the bullet ricochets and hits someone, strikes a elderly lady in the head.
Yeah.
Who's 68 years old, and kills her.
Right.
All right. So in that case, should felony murder apply?
Yeah.
Well, shouldn't it be manslaughter, not murder?
Adam, manslaughter.
That sounds like more manslaughter.
Adam, you spend more time with criminal law than I do. I like business law.
Well, manslaughter technically is a reduced.
Okay, that's a great example, and it shows you. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah. So no, I just wanted Mark's opinion, like on that example. Should the perpetrator also be charged with murder for the
murder in the first degree, and there's an accidental shooting? I don't think so, but I'm not a lawyer, as Nick very plainly made it at the beginning. But as one involved in it
wasn't an accidental shooting. They shot it in the air on purpose.
But they were not intended to hit the person.
Hit the person.
Yeah, but they were aware of the danger though.
They're aware of the danger of the person.
Well, anyone's aware of the danger of shooting a gun. I mean,
taking a gun to a robbery.
Anyone's aware of the danger of shooting a gun. It could possibly ricochet.
Tremonti, this is starting to sound like law school.
Yeah,
Okay.
Change the facts, and it changes.
So in that case, nothing, no culpability for the death.
I don't know, Adam. What are your thoughts on that one?
In that situation, I would hold that person responsible for, let's say, armed robbery and possibly second-degree murder or voluntary manslaughter, and they would get sentenced on each count. But I would not use the felony murder doctrine, because what the felony murder doctrine does is it puts people in prison for life, often without parole, or it subjects them to the death penalty for acts that they never intended or acts that they never committed. if you're part of a group of 3 people going into a grocery store and one of them shoots the clerk, the other 2, even though they never intended to shoot anybody, are held responsible for the murder, and they can be subject to the death penalty in Tennessee, for example, or life in prison. That is wrong, and that is unjust. And it's also wrong and unjust in the Arbery case. And what I'd like to see academics do is be intellectually honest, because for years they've come out against the felony murder doctrine. Well, they should be saying the same thing in this case, because it's wrong, it's unjust, and it's been used to put a lot of African Americans in prison unjustly, and that's really tragic.
Right. So the thing is, they're in prison for life, but what they did is they showed up to the party. They didn't drink. The other person drunk, got and killed somebody, and all of a sudden you get thrown in jail. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, I read about it a long time ago. I didn't think it was right when I read it in law school, and I still don't think it's right today. But what do you think, Dan Worthington? What's your thoughts on the felony murder doctrine? I didn't even think it was still around today.
As Chris Rock said, you shouldn't be hanging around with stupid people or crazy people, because they're going to get you put in jail. And that's what happens with felony murder. You hang around with stupid people or crazy people that have guns, they kill somebody, and you end up going to jail. In this case, it was 3 white dudes. One guy did the shooting. He claims that he came after his gun. Big deal. The other 2 have got the same penalty because they were there, right? And so, Adam, you're right. It doesn't work just against black people. It works against all people who are around stupid criminals. Mm-hmm. And that's the truth. Now, you have a higher percentage of non-white people around stupid criminals than you do black people around stupid criminals. I don't know. Is it inherently racist? I don't know. I mean, but if I think one of the arguments you can make, if it has a disparate result, because you have more, black people getting put away for felony murder than white people getting put away for felony murder, you can make that argument. I don't know if it has a disproportionate impact from a constitutional standpoint. Would you take that case, Adam?
On disproportionate impact alone, no, because I don't think disproportionate impact is necessarily evidence of discrimination. But what I really believe is that the soul of the criminal law is culpability, blameworthiness. And with the felony murder doctrine, in my view, you are holding people, you are claiming that people are culpable for murders that they never intended or never even committed or even contemplated. Right. So I think that the sentence for felony murder is disproportionate to the culpability, and that's where I have a problem with it.
Adam,
I think our system is definitely systematically racist.
Yes.
Well, no matter what era you want to take it, whether you go to whatever era, really.
How do you define systematically? What does that mean?
Let me ask you a question, Adam. If the population is 13% of the African Americans make 13% of the population, but they make up 40% of the prison population. Is that not to have to?
I was about to make out, the mass incarceration.
Well, I don't want to interrupt. So go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I was just going to say there's mass incarceration rates, disproportionate incarceration rates among black males in particular, folks that look like myself. There is, the phenomenon of driving while black, which I can only tell you about. You'll never have to experience that if you go out on your car right now, down here in South Florida, anywhere else. There is me having to have the talk with my kids that you're not going to have with yours. Right. There is also the racism stereotypes I get as a black man, right? Like, I'm usually the most educated person in any room that I'm in, having a JD MBA, a doctorate and a master's. Obviously, I work at Microsoft. I mean, I can go on and on and on, but you'll be surprised, right? I mean, some of the stereotypes I get, they're laughable. That being said, I do think that the system is systematically racist. I mean, I could give personal examples. I could give statistics all day. I was kind of surprised to hear you say what you said, but you're definitely entitled to that opinion. I guess I see the disparities as discriminatory, and you don't see them as discriminatory. So that would definitely be one clear divide between our opinions. But and that's actually one of the main reasons why I see why I feel like the system is systematically racist is actually because of the numbers being so stark, right? The differences between the numbers.
Well,
And
can I
if I
respond
can,
to that?
if I can just add one more thing before I'm sure Adam's got an opinion. My brother actually works with at-risk youth, and I even hate that term, but he works with youth. And I can tell you that African American students are sometimes 3 times, and in some populations, even 4 or 5 times more likely to be suspended and also more likely to fail. So there's also a problem within the education system that plays into the greater system as well. So that is also part of the systematic racism.
Can I respond briefly,
Please.
Nick?
Of course you can.
Well, my point is simply, and I respect your view, I do. My point is simply that disproportionate impact or disparities do not always or even often reflect racism or discrimination. Over 90% of people who are put in jail for violent crimes are men. That doesn't mean the criminal justice system is racist. The majority of people who are nurses are women. That doesn't mean the nursing profession is sexist. And what you have to look at when it comes to the criminal justice system is you have to look at each county in each state. And what those statistics show is that arrest rates and conviction rates differ based on race-specific crime in those areas. Thus, for example, if in Bergen County, New Jersey, more white people are committing crimes, you're going to see more white people disparately arrested and convicted for crimes. The same is true in southern Indiana. And the evidence also suggests that African American police officers shoot African American and white suspects at the same rate as white officers do. So you really have to get into the data on a county-wide level. And when you do that, you see, number one, that 90 to 95% of people who are fatally shot, like I said, are armed and resisting arrest, that it really differs based on counties, based on the race that is committing most of the crimes. And in some counties, it's whites. In some counties, it's black people. So the idea that we're going to make this overly broad generalization that the system is systemically racist, I think is divisive and wrong. And I think that the last 3 verdicts in Chauvin, Rittenhouse, and the Arbery case suggest that that's not necessarily accurate.
Adam, can I ask you about two major drug problems that have happened in the country, and you tell me that they don't have a different kind of impact? We saw what happened when the crack epidemic happened in mostly the inner city, and when the opiate epidemic happened, which is predominantly a thing that has impacted most of the white society and things of that nature. And the way that they are handled, the way that they've been treated, have been vastly different.
Are you saying in terms of sentencing?
In terms of sentences, in terms of even getting sentenced, half the folks that are on opiates aren't even charged.
Well, if you go to southern Indiana, what you'll find is that whites are disproportionately arrested and convicted because guess what? Most of the whites are committing crimes. Usually it's meth and opiates. I do agree with you that the sentencing disparity between, for example, crack cocaine and powder cocaine that the federal sentencing guidelines embraced was wrong. What I'm not prepared to say is that it was racist. And Justice Stephen Breyer was the author of those sentencing guidelines. I think that the inclination to say that disparity equals discrimination and to attribute things to racism ignores the complexities of things on a very local level, and it does a disservice to those who are trying to seek out not only facts but solutions to the problems that are confronting us.
Yeah, Adam, though, doesn't it really depend on where you live and who the judge is in a lot of cases? Because the thing is, at least my experience going in front of judges, it really makes a difference what judge I'm in front of. And I've seen verdicts that and judges to be completely inconsistent. And it depends on what court.
Well, Nick, it depends on the judge and the jury. Look at O.J. Simpson. He was acquitted after 4 hours, despite evidence overwhelming of his guilt. Look at Bill Cosby, who was released.
Time out. O.J. lends the system to be more racist than less racist, okay? Because the thing is, even though I know you're perched in the high perches of Georgia College and the educational system, when you talk among the attorneys and you're impaneling a jury and you're doing this for a living, all right? Okay, there's 2 types of defense lawyers, the smart ones and the not so smart ones. The smart ones know impaneling the jury and the race makes a difference. They talk to any defense attorney. The ones that, and I used to work with them, they're usually people in the, work for the government. they weren't so smart. They're going, oh no, the world's colorblind. Well, it isn't. Okay, I mean the thing is, and O.J. Simpson was a great example. If the jury was impaneled differently, I think he would have got a different outcome. So
I think that's very speculative and very stereotypical of you. I think what happened there was money, classism, not racism.
And just
I'd like to hear Tremonte's opinion on that. But
I was just going to say something. Yeah. I mean, not necessarily on that, but I was just saying. I mean, the OJ case, man, we could have a whole discussion on the trial. Yeah, but I was just going to say, you have the Justice Department investigating, entire police departments like Ferguson, and so that even lends more credibility to our argument. These 1983 cases, is, as you know, Adam, civil rights cases comprise a lot of the suits, right? A lot of the lawsuits that we see.
Yeah, right.
And a lot of the plaintiffs are citizens like myself, and the defendants are law enforcement. Some of them are acting under color of title, and we know that there is racism in some of these cases. I mean, let's not.
Tremonte, I'll go on further. There's actually a good old boy system that exists out there that people don't want to talk about, and lawyers are almost prohibited from talking about it because they're considered disparaging the legal profession. But I've been on the wrong side of the good old boy network because I went to a courtroom in Washington State, of all places. And the thing is, unfortunately, I was going against the person whose partner was a former or current head of the Bar Association. So they wouldn't even listen to the claim of the person that was unethical when he took a case and he didn't disclose the fact my defendant was his client. In other words, and you're supposed to, if you're going to be an arbitrator, an independent arbitrator, you can't have the defendant be the client, not disclose it, which is exactly what he did. And so I've actually personally witnessed this stuff. Let's go to Brunswick, Georgia, the state that you live in, Adam. It took 2.5 months to even file the indictment. As people recused themselves over and over again, they had to get the Georgia Bureau of Investigation on board because the good old boy system was working. Hey, we ain't going to indict Charlie. Everybody knows Charlie. He's a good old boy. Nick, come on. I mean, I unfortunately, I guess I grew up in the South, and I've seen this happen even in my family in Tampa. We're so well known that when my grandfather was in trouble, he called the judge and said, "Look, I got go to jail." "Yeah, don't worry, Nick, you ain't guilty. Come on in." And that's called the good old boy system. And I know you don't believe in it because you sit in academia and everything's wonderful.
No, I do. I believe that there is racism, but I don't believe that there is systemic racism. Obama's Justice Department under Eric Holder found that Darren Wilson did not violate the civil rights of Michael Brown. That is a fact. They did find that the Ferguson Police Department, though, was corrupt in the way that it was issuing citations. So, yes, there's racism, Nick, but it's more complicated than that. And I think we need to be careful in saying when something is racist. We throw the term around way too frequently. We throw around terms like systemic racism way too frequently. But when you look at the facts involving arrests at the county level, involving crime rates relative to population density, and you look at the verdicts that we just saw in the last 3 cases, I think it makes a case that it's not systemically racist. And I think to be intellectually honest, we should admit that, because that's going to get us closer to the solutions that are going to make us a better and more just society.
We're going to have to fundamentally disagree there, Adam. I mean, even what you said, right, with the citations.
Is that inaccurate?
What's that?
Was that inaccurate?
Well, no, I think you said that they found that there were federal violations, right? And the way that the citations were being.
That's right. That's correct.
Yeah, so, I mean, do you think that that's not happening in other places and other departments and other jurisdictions?
I do, but I think it's affecting poor people of all races. I think it's more of an issue of, poor people in Southern Indiana, poor people in Alabama. I do agree that racism is a problem. I do. But I think a lot of it has to do more with the effects on people who are in poverty, regardless of race.
I'd agree. I think it is social economic that the justice system isn't as just for people who are poor. They're the ones that are more likely to be sold down the river by the defense attorneys because they don't know their rights. in their plea bargains. And it doesn't matter if they're white or black. That's going to happen. Is they don't have the money to pay for a proper defense, and they don't have the wherewithal or the relationships in the community to take advantage of the good old boy network. I mean, I grew up poor, and so I've seen that. I've seen it time and time again. I saw it with how my mom was treated in the community when she ended up at 15 years old pregnant from a guy that was my father from a prominent family, and how they had to literally drag him into court to get him to take any responsibility. He still didn't pay a stitch of child support because he had something on the prosecutors. So, I mean, it really is justice is not fair when it comes to people who have influence and money, and that's not that doesn't matter about race. Whether you're white or black, if you have money, you're more likely to be able to beat the system. If you're poor, your chances of beating the system or getting a fair trick are not going to be nearly in your favor at all, because you get railroaded by the prosecutors and by the system. And that's the way the system works in America. Sorry about that. It's just the way it does. So, Adam, I agree. It is an economic issue from that standpoint.
But even if it's an economic issue, it still might tie back to race, because there is a wealth gap as well. There's a severe gap between the African-American population and the European population and several other populations as well. So there's
but do you know that the wealth gap is more severe among whites than it is blacks right now? I mean, that's ironic. Seems ironic, but the average wage for white working males is actually lower than black working males, because opportunities have been made. So fundamentally, we're seeing a turning of an upside down of cause and effect in our society. And I mean, it's not fair to anybody who's poor. But then it also has to do with their willingness to go and get an education, learn, and find opportunities, whether you're white or whether you're black. And then having the chances to do that based on the system in the educational system, whether or not you're going to be given those opportunities. So, we got a lot of stuff to fix, but what will not fix it is the vitriol and the name calling and all of the violence that has taken place in this country in the last year, and the destruction of property, which, by the way, hurt more black neighborhoods than it did white ones. More black business owners were impacted than white business owners, all in the name of social justice. It was craziness, and it was wrong to hurt so many people, to make so many livelihood based on, and no one took really any legal accountability for it. And guess who were the victims of all that?
Yeah, I hear people saying that, who was affected more. I have to see the numbers on that. All I've heard is people just, I don't know what research, what data, as far as what was damaged more or what was damaged, worse. I do know that had folks that looked like us marched on the Capitol, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I do know. I do know that they were treated completely different than how what you were talking about, the people who were destroying their property, were treated. They were literally tearing our Capitol up and got walked out by the police. So all that you're saying.
But nothing happened to the rioters and the looters. Nothing.
Well, the thing is, I thought there were like 970 arrests on.
And they're all bailed out.
And well, bail is a whole nother question that you have to look at, because remember the person who just ran over a bunch of people. That's another thing we're gonna have to discuss.
Yeah,
he got out on $1,000 bail after it was determined. The judge said, well, all he was going to do is run over his spouse and let him out with $1,000 bail. And I'm going like, are you serious? And see, this is the problem with the justice system, the inconsistency. Why would a judge, if somebody came to your courtroom and the prosecuting attorney said, well, we would like the bail to be set at $100,000 or $1 million. What do you do? He tried to run over his spouse. And the judge goes, No, I don't think it's a big deal. We'll set the bail at $1,000.
Yeah.
And then he runs over a bunch of people. How can people have a lot of confidence in a judicial system that does things like that? Mr. Adams, since you teach, so you don't have to deal with this stuff. How do you how do you explain that to your students, saying, well, he got out with $1,000 bail because, the judge didn't want to give him
Well, in a situation like that, my view is that you had a very incompetent decision maker, and it wasn't really a product of the system, but it was whoever made that decision, whatever judge, it was just a terrible decision. And you will get that, just like you will get incidents of racism, sexism, and classism. But, we're talking all this stuff about racism. I'm from New Jersey, okay? I grew up in New Jersey. I love New Jersey. I miss the Garden State. I miss my family and my friends. I moved down here to Georgia, and when I was driving through Macon, when I was starting to teach here, I got pulled over. And do you want to know how I was treated? I was treated like an animal. I was treated horribly.
Just a second, Counselor. Did you have Jersey license tags?
Well, yes, I did,
Okay,
and I had to remove them and I have no plans to. But
you had them when you were driving at the time, right?
I did.
Okay,
and my point is the idea that everything is reducible to race is a simplistic and false narrative that's dividing us, just like identity politics is dividing us. We need to be focusing on solutions, and to do that, we need to be focusing on facts and focusing on the values that we all have in common. It really concerns me that we have this narrative that white people are racist, that white people are privileged. What kind of a message does that send to the Black community? We need to focus on reforming policing where it is racist, but not categorically condemning all police as racist or the system is racist. We need to recognize that it's a really complex problem that involves many things, such as having Jersey plates and not my race. And if we don't do that, then we're not going to have any solutions or make any progress.
Well, I think you did bring up another issue. It's your license tags. And Tremonte, I went to the U, the University of Miami, so yeah. I'm totally familiar with the license flag. I grew up in the South. Okay, and yeah, come on, you see a New Jersey tag.
Oh, so you're justifying that kind of discrimination?
No, it's not discrimination.
Those people from New Jersey.
I hate to say it, Adam. You're a Yankee. Okay,
proud Yankee fan too.
You're from New Jersey.
You have entire corporate trainings on privilege, so that's not going anywhere.
Well, I don't have privilege. I grew up.
You have entire trainings on privilege, and you have white people acknowledging their privilege.
And I will never acknowledge my privilege because I don't have any.
As long as you have, and just even acknowledging just based off of the color of your skin, right? When you say you don't have any, just the fact that you don't have to worry about being pulled over while driving while Black is an example of one.
And the studies of driving while Black
way that you have privilege, but there's different levels, right? There's things that you don't have to worry about because you have that privilege that I have to worry about, right? And that's one of them. So you have, and you do have plenty of white people who can acknowledge that, who can admit that it's not necessarily your financial means, right? It could just be it could just be a matter of you getting the benefit or you getting the benefit over me because of the color of your skin. And sometimes you're not going to know it because no one's going to tell you. Right? Like a lot of this stuff happens covertly. It's no way to tell, right? If me and you apply for a job and you get it over me, it may be because you were white. It may not be. You can make an argument. I can make an argument. Who knows at the end of the day, and who's gonna know? The point is, there's no way that we're gonna be able to know unless someone says I made this decision. All things being even, and I made this decision because of this. There's no way that we're gonna know.
Let's talk about ageism. Okay, I know ageism in it all the time.
Tell me about the poor, white, transgendered, mentally ill, schizophrenic person who grows up in poverty, has more privilege than O.J. Simpson or Bill Cosby. The privilege argument doesn't work because it's based on generalization on the basis of race and thus is inherently racist. I reject racism. It's despicable. People are individuals and they're different.
Well, but you just admitted that there's racism, though. So what do you
No, I didn't. I said white people are not uniformly privileged.
What's that?
I said, imagine a white impoverished transgendered boy who is bullied relentlessly at school versus black immigrants or black people who live in Beverly Hills. My point is, you can't say that everybody is privileged just solely based on their race.
No, I'm just, yeah, but you don't have to use an extreme example. Just imagine me and you leaving our house and me getting pulled over and you not. You don't have to go to that extreme. Just leave it between us.
Well, that's what Chris Rock said.
Imagine me walking into a room with majority white people and getting treated a certain way, and you're getting treated.
Terrence.
You don't have to go to extremes.
No,
Terrence.
Like
Chris Rock
too.
Chris Rock said, "Get a white friend. Get a white friend." That's what he said.
And there's a lot of businesses
I'll
that
just
actually
quote
literally
Morgan
are doing
Freeman.
that. Dan, there's a lot of businesses that literally are doing what you're suggesting for exactly that reason. But Adam, you just said that you were against, at least I misheard you, correct me, but I think you just said that you're against identity politics, but yes, you just used an example that was identity politics.
No, it wasn't. It was about individual characteristics. That's completely different.
How's that different? Transgender and some of the other things is part of the identity politics.
Because what you're saying is, because of your race exclusively, you have certain privileges or certain disadvantages that I don't have. But when you look at the fact that individuals confront so many different circumstances in their environment, poverty, sexual orientation, transgenderism, okay, and you look at maybe they grew up in a single parent family with abusive parents, maybe they struggle with mental illness, and it's not an extreme example because over 20% of people do. There's so many different factors that subject many people to adversity and oppression and discrimination. So to reduce it all to race is wrong. It's divisive. It's identity politics. And I reject it because you know what? I want this country united. And I respect people of all races and backgrounds. And I'm sick and tired of us being divided on the basis of race. And you know what? I'm sorry if we went into a room and you would be treated differently. That's wrong. And I apologize for that because that shouldn't ever happen.
You don't have to apologize for it, but you got to acknowledge that it's your privilege that causes it to happen, and you got to acknowledge that it happens.
Because I don't think
we're reducing everything to racism.
I think you are, but
you know, racism has to be able to be discussed without you saying that everything's being reduced to it.
What's funny, Tremonte.
Well, then acknowledge the other factors that go into that. Okay.
When you say,
there's certain factors.
Poverty.
I'm a black man, so there's certain things that I'm not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to identify with that I can identify with. That's just the fact.
Well, you can't identify with someone who's of a different sexual orientation. You can identify with someone who's impoverished, but I don't accept that argument that we can't identify with people just because we don't have their experiences. We can identify with disadvantage and discrimination, but we have to recognize that reducing everything to race and making these broad generalizations. I'm sorry. Connecticut is different than California. North Carolina is different than New York. Wisconsin is different than Washington. And when you make these blanket statements, you put people into groups based on race, and I think that's racist. I'm sorry.
No one's making a blanket. I mean, I disagree with you as far as they're systematic, right? I mean, if you think that's blanket, but I mean, it's no more blanket than you saying there's not. But
I said it depends on where you live in the county that you live in.
Yeah, like I said, I grew up in one of the most racist places. I grew up in the Bible Belt South, so I grew up in North Carolina.
Man.
I grew up in a very historically racist place. And anybody that's from Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina,
nobody deserves that.
Virginia, Tennessee.
May I add something here?
Yeah,
please, Dan.
I think both you and Taryn, you guys are both really cool, and I like you a lot.
Thank you.
I like you guys too.
I think y'all are cool too. Hey,
it's about time to have a civil discussion.
I'm going to tell you another thing because we beam on LinkedIn, and I did not put the question on LinkedIn about Ahmaud Arbery because last time I put one on Kyle Rittenhouse, I got banned from LinkedIn. And you're a white man. Okay, I know that.
There's really nothing controversial about what we're talking about.
The real problem, Tremonte, is if you're going to discuss Kyle Rittenhouse on LinkedIn, they say no, you're not going to discuss it. So when you guys are discussing like race and you're discussing the Ahmaud Arbery case, you're talking like playing with gasoline and fire. So unfortunately, whether you like it or not, this whole thing, it'll be beamed through LinkedIn. We could get banned on LinkedIn because you're discussing it. So because I've been banned on LinkedIn for discussing Kyle Rittenhouse. Now, so here's my thoughts, my question to you, and I'll start with Adam. Should this program be banned on LinkedIn because you guys are discussing race, Ahmaud Arbery. Should it just be banned and completely because it's stuff that you can't discuss on LinkedIn? I'll start with you, Adam.
Absolutely not. This show tonight is a perfect example of people who have different opinions being able to disagree civilly and provide diverse perspectives that educate, inform the audience. And that's a really good thing. And I think people should be able to hear from different perspectives and see that people can disagree respectfully and still be friends and get the information they need to form their own opinions.
Okay, Tremonte, should you be banned from LinkedIn because you're discussing race and you're discussing Ahmaud Arbery and Trayvon Martin and all this stuff? Should you be banned?
Absolutely not. As lawyers, I think we fundamentally believe in our freedoms. One of them is our First Amendment freedom of speech, even though LinkedIn is a private network owned by my company, which didn't come up today.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yes, I work for Microsoft. Yes, we own LinkedIn. That's a whole other conversation. But that being said, no, I don't agree with it. I don't agree with the censorship.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do feel like they are discriminatory in how they make those decisions as well. Mm-hmm. But that is another conversation for another day.
Yes, and Dan Worthington, we haven't been banned by Facebook on this one yet, but I go through different things where we get banned and don't get banned. But last time we were discussing Kyle Rittenhouse, we got banned. Now we're discussing Ahmaud Arbery. This show may get banned from LinkedIn or Facebook. They're very sensitive to whatever we're discussing. So what are your thoughts, Dan? Should we be banned from LinkedIn and Facebook because we're discussing issues like race and the Ahmaud Arbery case?
No, I think it's healthy to discuss these things from different perspectives and respectfully. I mean, the whole idea is we all like each other. We respect each other. We all have a little bit different opinions through our life experiences and academic experiences. I think it's good and healthy to discuss these things. And we do have a First Amendment right to talk about them. And I don't think we've been controversial at all. I think we've been even-handed and I think reasonable in our discussion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I got personally attacked just by putting this on LinkedIn. Mark, what are your thoughts? Should conversations like this be banned from LinkedIn and Facebook?
Well, y'all know I come from the field of journalism, so I definitely believe in open conversation and things of that nature. So it did absolutely not be banned. And as everybody has said, it's been a very civil conversation. We're all friends. We all get along, and we all definitely bring up very valid points that need to be discussed on a regular basis, including an issue that Dan was getting ready to bring up that I'm just going to throw out that we can also bring up in a future show as well, because Dan is correct. Ageism is a very real thing. I was actually just talking to my mom about that because she was forced out of a board at the age of 72, and it was actually a major banking board because of her age and everything. And now she's in her several years later. She's because that happens like 7-8 years ago. But yeah, she was forced out, and is still very much has all her faculties, is very smart, very much able to do what she was able to do. But they had that lovely age rule, Dan. So they were like, hey, 72, you got to go.
Right. Yeah. And
72 is the new 56.
I totally understand it. There's a lot of jobs I won't even apply for because I got to put my age down. I'm going like,
wait, I'm going to be 46 next week. Does that mean that I'm going to be subject to ageism now?
No,
I'm going on Medicare, dude. Okay. When you go on Medicare, your life is basically.
I don't like this getting old stuff.
I have a solution for you. I have a solution for you, Adam, and we can work on it. There's a solution to getting old. You know what the solution is? When you get old, get rich, and then you don't have to worry about getting a job.
There you go. There you go.
Well, thank you.
Do it when you're young. Get rich while you're young.
So how can I get jobs like I used to when I was 18?
Right. Well, we'll work on you on that.
When you get rich, then you get to go on those lovely joy rides.
Well, Nick, will you give me half of your money? Then I'll be rich and I'll be happy. So we've come to a solution.
That's true. We'll work on that in the next part of.
That's what lawyers are for, as we turn your money into our money, right?
Yeah, that's right. We'll talk about that later. Thanks everybody for watching World Edition from around the world. And thanks for our panelists, and we will see you next time on a special edition of World Edition. Our regular programming will be Monday at 10 o'clock as always. We'll see you then.
Thanks, everybody.